What's up, guys? I'm BTC. We just got our first gameplay trailer for Ramattra. Some of it was what we were expecting, but some of it definitely wasn't, and there's some new stuff here. I'm going to do a complete breakdown of all of his abilities and some of the more interesting things that I saw in this trailer. So the first thing is going to be his barrier, and this is going to work in a way similar to how Reaper uses Shadow Step or Ramattra uses her teleporter. Essentially, you have a targeting kind of indicator on the ground, and then you can activate it and it will create the barrier. So in this case, he's using it to block McCree's ultimate, and it has a kind of neat little shape there, so kind of to make it look different from the other barriers in the game as well. Now, as far as his normal attack goes, this is kind of weird because you can see he's attacking with it, but like they're very, very small, so it's hard to see. But there are some very, very small little purple crystal looking things that are flying out ahead of him. Now, I don't know how this is going to look to enemies, but it does look kind of difficult to see. So it's almost like you're going to just start taking damage from hit scan almost. I think this is probably going to be projectile, but it does kind of feel almost like a hit scan where you're just getting hit and you didn't actually see something, flying through the air. So you can see that. And then, of course, he gives a quick punch. In this case, he's going to use his palm. Now, this ability right here, we've already seen. So that's the barrier once again. So he stops that. Then he has some of those normal attacks again, which, again, they're very, very small little kind of purple crystal things that are just flying across the screen. They're very difficult to see, but they are there. And then he's going to use his ability, which is going to... It looks like he throws out an orb, and wherever that orb happens to hit is where it will generate the field. So I'm guessing that you need to aim it at the ground in order to get it to work, in the exact spot you want, or you can throw it at a wall and it will just kind of, create it near the wall. But what this does is a little bit of damage. It does slow them down, and as we can see from this footage right here, it does actually pull those characters down to the ground. Now, there's a little extra dramatic effect there, and it kind of moves over to a different map entirely. So it's not going to do anything like, instantly eliminate echoes and Pharahs and stuff like that. They just did that for dramatic effect for the gameplay trailer there. So you've got this right here. So he's getting hit by Soldier 76's Helix, and then he transforms into the Nemesis mode. And this is where you have a significant change to how he's going to play. Now, one of the things that we saw before was that he could do these kind of supercharged punches, and some people thought that was going to be his ultimate, but it's not. And what we can see here, now we get to see the punches in action. So you can see that when you punch, you're not actually trying to physically hit someone, you're actually launching out a beam of energy. And think of it like a short-range Reinhardt Fire Strike is basically what it is, because it is supposed to have piercing. Unless they've changed that, it is supposed to have piercing, which means that it will go through some of the barriers. Now, here's the next thing, and this is really, really big here, because I don't know if they're just doing this for dramatic effect in the trailer, or if this is actually indicative of how powerful his block is going to be. Now, in the other video that I made about Ramattra's abilities, I said that his block is basically a poor man's Doomfist block, because with Doomfist, at least you get some sort of charge from it, and you can do a little extra damage, and your punch gets a little thing, when you charge up damage incoming. But with this, you don't get any of that stuff. You have decreased movement speed, and you just block damage from the front. And I thought it was going to be pretty lackluster, but here we can see that Ramattra is actually just straight up tanking the damage from Pharah's ultimate, which is incredible. Like, there is a huge, I think last I checked, it was something like 3,600 damage total from Pharah's ultimate. So if you're able to block even a portion of that, that's a really significant amount of damage that you're blocking here with Ramattra. So again, I don't know if this is actually what's going to happen in game, or if this has just been kind of, dramatized for the gameplay trailer. But if that is the case, if you can walk through a Pharah ultimate and then come out on the other side and continue to attack Pharah. By the way, we saw that the range here for his punch it looks like it's going to be at least, 15 or so meters. So it's got a decent distance on it. It's not like you have to be super, super close with them in order to use it. But if you can just use this block to walk through a Pharah ultimate, that is unbelievably powerful. I would have to say you probably have something like, an 80%. Oh, actually, I think they capped damage resist at 50%, I believe. And that was because of the whole Bastion situation forever ago. I don't know if this is actually the same thing. Maybe they decided to cap it at 50% here and you can just kind of walk through it, or maybe it's a little higher. Maybe they've decided to go ahead and change that. But that's still very, very impressive. So you can see that he goes around and he starts punching and stuff. And here we have a pretty good. There you go. So that's what it looks like when you actually punch. So it's not just like a little thing. You generate this huge amount of energy. And it's kind of funny because his normal attack for the Omnic form, you can barely see it. It's like super tiny, tiny, tiny little purple crystal things. And with this, it's just absolutely gigantic. Like you can't possibly miss it. So we're going to continue here. He reverts back into the normal form. And then here, again, he creates the barrier. And we've got some more of his attacking, and he does that sort of stuff. And then this is where we show off the ultimate. So when you activate the ultimate, you're going to turn into the Nemesis, whether you are currently in Nemesis form or in Omnic form, it doesn't matter. Activating the ultimate automatically puts you into Nemesis form. So you could probably use this as kind of a cooldown breaker if we don't exactly know how that's going to work yet when you go into Nemesis form and how long it lasts and this and that. It looks like it's actually going to be 8 seconds. There was a little translation error before, but it doesn't look like you get to stay in Nemesis form forever. Now you only get 8 seconds of it, which again, I don't quite understand what they were talking about when they said that they were adding a new functionality to the game. They're like, "Oh, we're adding something new that people have been asking for," which happened to be, being able to move into a different form, but I mean, Bastion's been doing that since the game came out. So, I don't know exactly know what they were talking about there. Anyways, you can move into the Nemesis form, so you could use it, and then as soon as it's over, you could activate your ultimate, which will put you back into it. So I guess you can have 16 seconds of Nemesis form if you set up your cooldowns and time it correctly. So what he's going to do here is he's going to block some of the damage, and then he activates his Nemesis, or excuse me, his ultimate, which is going to be this gigantic thing right here. And what this does is it causes damage in the entire area. Think of it as a reverse Zenyatta ultimate. Rather than healing all of your teammates in the area, it damages all the enemies in the area. And it simply requires line of sight. So you can see here that he's able to damage the Ana, he's able to damage the Pharah, he's able to damage Soldier and Mercy, but not the Reinhardt, because the Reinhardt is behind a barrier. So barriers and, basically anything that blocks line of sight will then prevent the ultimate from working, but anybody who's not will take damage. Now, the way this was described is that it will stay on, like once you activate it, it stays on until you are no longer damaging any enemies. So we don't know if this is going to have a grace period, like, Zenyatta's orbs and stuff, where it's 1 or 2 seconds, or if it just instantly shuts off as soon as the enemies are out of the area. But it does do, it appears to do at least a decent amount of damage. Now, it's probably not going to be anything even close to, like, Reaper's ultimate or anything like that in terms of AoE damage, but it's going to do some decent damage over time. Now, he does go through, and he ends up attacking the Reinhardt, and again, that it looks like his punch and doesn't seem to have been changed. It looks like it does actually have the piercing abilities of Fire Strike, so barriers are not going to stop his punch attack when he's in Nemesis. So he does, and Reinhardt finally just decides to drop his shield because it wasn't doing anything. Now, here's the thing. When we look at this here, you can see that the shield is not really taking damage, right? Like he decided after it got hit a couple times, the shield itself is not taking damage. Instead, the Reinhardt on the other side is, which again shows that it's piercing damage in that. So we've got a little bit more, and then he uses his ability again, even in the the Nemesis form, you can still use that ability. It works in both the Omnic and Nemesis form, and he does it to pull down the Mercy, who was ultimating, who was using her ultimate, and she was flying in the air, and then she gets pulled to the ground, and then it has some dramatic stuff, and then that's basically it for the gameplay that we saw. So you can see that the Ramattra, the Nemesis abilities do seem to be pretty powerful, right? So I mean, he's got some good functionality and some just good uh, overall kind of defensive abilities in his Omnic form with the barrier and the long range, almost hit scan type attack. And it does seem that once you shift into the Nemesis form, he becomes just an absolute powerhouse. Now, this is going to be, I think, one of two things. Either he's going to be way too good, way too strong, because he can just do everything, right? Or he's going to be garbage. And the reason why I say he's going to be garbage, possibly, I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but think of it this way. When he has all these different things, the way that Blizzard balances it is that they continue to make everything bad, right? So what they need to do is they don't want him to be too strong. So because he has so many different things, rather than emphasizing one particular aspect of the character, they basically just nerf everything about the character across the board. So they'll nerf his damage, or they'll nerf his health, or whatever like that. So rather than having it so he's good at just one thing and okay at the other, they just nerf it so that he's bad at everything. And that's might end up what's happening with him. But I think when he's first released, at the very least, when he's first released, he's probably going to be just unbelievably good. Like, just probably the best tank in the game, because he has so much functionality and he has so many different things that you can do. You can attack people from long range. You can shift into someone that can just basically tank a Pharah ult, which is just kind of crazy, and then do massive amounts of damage and all this sorts of stuff. So I have a feeling that when he first gets released, this seems to be kind of a pattern with new characters in Overwatch. When he first gets released, he's probably going to be way too strong, but I have a feeling that Blizzard is probably, unfortunately, going to just nerf him across the board, which will then reduce his effectiveness overall, rather than making him emphasize on one side or the other. But anyways, so there you go. Those are all his abilities, and it looks pretty good. It looks like it's going to be at least a fun character to play. It's going to be very challenging, trying to balance out everything. But there you go, guys. What do you think about the new Ramattra gameplay? Let me know down below.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive and